and fight and help my patients and my students with is victim consciousness. And so I like to give people tools for what to do about Me Too rather than just responding Me Too and having it kind of sit there as, wow, look at the numbers of people that have had this happen to them. Because it is staggering. The statistics are very high. 1 in 4 children has some sort of abuse that is reported, which means a lot higher than that. We have 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 4 boys that are victims of sexual abuse. This is a lot. And again, it's what's reported. So what we want is we want to give people tools, because when we're children, we don't have any power. We're not autonomous. We are trying to figure out how to be humans on planet Earth with the other humans. And we're told when to brush our teeth, what to wear, what to eat, where to go to school, what to do in school, when to go to bed, right? We just really don't have much choice in our lives. And so when things are happening, when our brains are developing, our brain's not fully developed till we're 26 years old. That prefrontal cortex that's in the front area of our brain is all about our adult thinking skills, our impulse control, our executive function. And when we're young, we don't have that yet. So we're trying to figure out how to be humans. And when things happen where we have our trust violated and we can't understand and we can't explain it and we don't know what to think about it, we make stuff up. So as children, we'll make up some meaning about that. For example, when I was sexually abused, when I was 10, it was the vice principal of my elementary school, and I made up a story that said people in authority aren't really safe and can't be trusted. And that was true for me, but not every person in authority, and not everywhere that I go in my lifetime will I be unsafe. But in this case, the behavior that I adopted as a result of that meaning, because this happened to me while I was a student in school, in elementary school, was that I needed to be perfect to even survive the experience. And of course, that's an impossible task I set up for myself. So when I talk about what to do with Me Too, I'm talking about becoming your own shero, your own hero for girls and, for boys, and your own shero for girls. I really want you to be able to reclaim your power. And the way that you do that is by reframing your story, doing the release on the trauma, getting your brain rewired, and understanding what are the beliefs and the meanings that you made up when you were an impressionable, innocent child. And these things happen that you didn't have anybody to protect you from, or anybody to explain them to you, or anybody to process them with you. So then we come into adulthood with these meanings and these beliefs and these behaviors that don't serve us. And there's a scientific study that was done on this, several of them, but the biggest one is called the ACEs study, or Adverse Childhood Experiences study. And the study was done as a result of a weight loss clinic that was being done at Kaiser Permanente. And with this weight loss clinic, it was a pretty successful weight loss program. But they started noticing that women were dropping out of the program before they met their goal weight, and started scratching their heads saying, well, why are these women dropping out before they finish when they're successful up to this point, and then they start self-sabotaging? So they went back and started calling the women back in and asking them different questions to find out what was going on, and they found that many of them had been sexually abused. So they combined with the Centers for Disease Control and did a larger study that actually involved 17,000 participants, over 17,000, and found that of these 17,000 participants in this giant study, over 2/3 of them reported having what is called now an adverse childhood experience, or an ACEs score of 1 or more. Now, what they were studying is really pretty limited, but it was a great start for understanding how these experiences from our childhood impact our adult behaviors, beliefs, and meanings, and our health. So what they studied were 10 different kinds of neglect. And they asked these 17,000 plus participants if they had been sexually abused, psychologically, emotionally, physically abused, if they had watched their mother be beaten, if their parents had gotten divorced, if they had a parent that was incarcerated or had died, if they had a parent that was addicted to a substance like drugs or alcohol. All of these were some form of trauma that they called an ACE. And if you have an ACE score of 1, then you have a higher likelihood of having heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disease, not taking care of yourself in adulthood by eating really good food or sticking to a workout regimen. You have a higher risk of being depressed, having anxiety, even suicide, sexual promiscuity. All of these things that we see in our culture today as chronic illnesses can be tied to a higher ACE score. So the higher the ACE score, the higher the risk of any of these problems, including obesity and absenteeism at work. If you have an ACE score of 6 or more, your likelihood of your lifespan being cut short by 20 years goes way, way up. So you can see that the correlation is really profound between the MeToo and what happens in your health journey in adulthood. The good news is that, and I wrote this in my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, is that this is fixable. It's reversible, which is why I say what to do with MeToo. We don't want to say, okay, so me too, this happened to me too, and then not do anything with it. So what I'm going to do on Thursday of this week is have a private community gathering of people that have had this Me Too experience. And I'm going to give you some tools and do some coaching for how to unlock this outcome that goes with an ACEs score from childhood. And it's not just sexual abuse, it's like I said, any of these 10 things. Now, you could call those 10 things that I just talked about capital T trauma. But there's also lowercase t trauma. So as I talk, in fact, I just had a new patient in my office today, and she said, I was asking her, tell me a little bit about your childhood and how would you summarize it? Just a couple words about your relationship with your parents and your childhood. And she had a few decades under her belt. It had been a while since she'd been a child and had some things going on in her health that could very well have been correlated to what I call the 4 corners of a chronic disease puzzle. And one of them is Me Too, past childhood adverse experiences. The other 3 are your genetics, toxic exposure, and leaky gut. And all of those will actually upregulate genes that you have in your system that maybe you don't want to have turned on. For example, a family propensity for cancer or autoimmune disease. And so you can turn those genes off. We know that now through the study of epigenetics. So I was talking to her and she said, oh no, I had a pretty good childhood, and I hear that a lot. And I agree. I had a pretty good childhood too. I had a great childhood. I did have this one experience, with a 5th grade vice principal, and then I had a dad that was gone a lot with the Navy. And so I felt quite abandoned frequently when I was a little kid. Not his fault, but it's how I perceived it as he left, over those times. And so that would have been called an ACE score. So I have an ACE score of 2 or more. Turns out she has an ACE score of 4. But as we go through our lives, that's our normal. And she didn't have capital T trauma, she had lowercase t trauma. So she had someone in her family that bullied her a lot. And so that counts, right? Because the meanings that she made up were, gosh, she was a younger sibling. What did I do to deserve this? How come this is happening? Or if you have a mother that dies, and then you have a stepmom that moves in. This happens a lot. It's the Cinderella story, right? And you feel kind of abandoned by the parent that dies. then you're going to have this meaning that you make up as a kid that maybe you're not worth sticking around for. And again, that is not logical. It's not rational. But as small children, we make stories up because we are self-centered. We're supposed to be at that age. As we're growing up until we're age 26, we're trying to figure out how to be humans. And so we are, by definition, supposed to be self-centered as we self-reference ourselves in the context of our environment and the people that we're sharing our environment with. So it's just natural that this happens. Now you get into adulthood and you have a story like I had, like I have to be perfect to even survive, or I'm not worthy of being loved because my parent died. You know, as an adult, you can look at that and say, well, that's not really logical. But if you don't examine those beliefs after you're 26, they will haunt you and they will rule you. They will influence the behaviors that you have. For example, whether or not you get up in the morning and go work out, or what you do with your free time, or what you put on the end of your fork or in your glass, how you spend your money, whether or not you save, all of these things, your relationships with other people, your significant others, and your children, all are impacted by these beliefs that come from MeToo experiences. So it's really important that we figure out what to do with MeToo. Now, we seem to have this very interesting dynamic happening in our culture, and it's like a race to see who's the most oppressed. And that's kind of an interesting change. You know, we had this World War II generation that our grandparents are a part of, and they were heroes. We had somebody that was threatening, you know, world freedom, basically, and countries that aligned with each other, and there was a clear enemy, and there were heroes that were going, and we celebrated heroism. But nowadays, we have a different thing happening. We have people that are talking very loudly about how bad they have it, and it's all over the map. You can see it everywhere. You might see it in your own head. You know, it can be between genders, it can be sexuality, it can be race, it can be religion, it can be politics, us against them. And it's a victim consciousness. And that keeps us stuck in the Me Too because it just feeds whatever it was we decided as kids when we had some sort of injury that we couldn't explain. We can always find things to support what it is we decided as kids when we were hurt. Like people aren't safe, or men aren't safe, or whatever it is that we decided. And, you know, that's actually not accurate. You can also find plenty of evidence to support the opposite. And so it's not that we want to go through life being a Pollyanna, but what we do want to do is take some tools and really deal with those experiences at the level of the beliefs they created. So in other words, nowadays at 52, I want to celebrate the fact that my flaws and the mistakes I make are perfection. That I reframed my story of what perfection actually means, and I understand that making mistakes is really how you learn. And so I can see that everything that happens is perfect. It's all God. But you know, when I was 20, I could not do that. I didn't want to make mistakes. I tried very hard not to make mistakes, and I was really hard on myself if I did, and shamed myself and blamed myself and felt very guilty. I was very driven. And that is a complete recipe for illness, which is what happened. When I was 30, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called rheumatoid arthritis. And it wasn't until I got that autoimmune disease that I had to start looking at this, which is the beauty of illness, is it's a catalyst for you to really start examining why it's happening, instead of how do I just get out of my suffering. And that's what we always want to do, right? We want to get out of pain as quickly as possible. And instead of asking, well, why is this happening? What is it that my body is asking from me? And so with my RA, or rheumatoid arthritis, I started studying some alternative treatments to what my doctor was telling me I needed to do, which was take a lot of really bad drugs that had some pretty serious side effects that I didn't want to take. And I discovered yoga. and Ayurvedic medicine. And Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga, says that autoimmune disease is undigested anger. Well, I see my friend Faye is on here. Hi, Faye! So Faye used to be my best friend in high school. She knows how driven I was. And I was also a people pleaser in a big way. So I would always try and make everybody happy around me. Well, so when I heard undigested anger, I thought, I'm not an angry person. And then I learned how to meditate, and I sat one day with this word, autoimmune, and I realized that meant I was attacking myself. I was really committing suicide. And I thought, gosh, I don't want to die. I have these 4 great kids. I have this life I love. Why am I killing myself? And what I discovered as I kind of went back through my life to the very first time I felt like I wanted to die, it was when I was 10. And it was when I was in elementary school. So what I wanted to do then is say, okay, that makes sense. Of course I'm angry, and I've never dealt with it. Instead, I had this behavior of trying to be as perfect as possible. And it's not working for me. I'm really sick, and I need to look at this. And that's where I started practicing all the things I talk about in my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle. And when I dealt with the anger and I realized what was going on, I was able to get rid of it, and I got better within 6 months. No more autoimmune disease for the last 22 years. So that's why we want to deal with Me Too. We want to do something with it rather than just say Me Too. It's really important. And the other thing that it can do, this Me Too hashtag, is it can divide us as I'm the victimized and there was a perpetrator out there, and we can forget that at some point along the way, we too have been the perpetrator, and we have victimized somebody, perhaps inadvertently. So for example, I would never sexually abuse anybody, but if I go underneath what drove my vice principal to sexually abuse me, gosh, it was actually kind of a race thing. I was the only white kid, one of 2 white kids in my elementary school, and he used to call me white trash, and he said I was bad, so there was obviously some anger there, and then some misuse of power. So if I were to say, okay, what are the ego traits that this man had that drove him to do this behavior and not get tied up in the behavior, I can say, well, a misuse of power. And I can say, so how have I misused power in my life? And gosh, anyone that's a parent has misused power at some point. Any guilt trip I put my kids on before I was aware of this stuff, total misuse of power. So I really got that. I thought, oh, that's the same energy. Even though the behavior is different, it's the same energy. That made it a lot easier for me to forgive him. Now, does that mean I'm going to reconcile with him, to call him up and go have tea with him? No, never. But it does help me to not be bitter and resentful and to hold on to the Me Too in my body or in my spirit or in my mind or my heart. I'm free of it because I started seeing, oh gosh, I have the same attributes. This is what in a Native American tradition, the Cherokees have a story that they tell where a young boy comes to the chief of the tribe, who is his grandfather, and says, "Grandfather, how do I become a good man rather than a bad man?" And his grandfather says, "Grandson, each man has within him 2 wolves, a white wolf and a dark wolf, and whichever you feed the most to grows the strongest." And so when somebody has hurt you, if you have the Me Too, then somebody hurt you profoundly, you can actually say, do I want to feed the dark wolf as a result of this or the white wolf? And you get to learn and have this person be your teacher for what it looks like to be on the receiving end of something like misuse of power or bigotry or any of the personality traits that can lead us down a path of hurting another person or being hurt by somebody. So in other words, what I'm saying is every single human has the exact same personality characteristics, but we do them differently. So that's what you do with Me Too. You look at it and you say, okay, how do I learn from this and move forward a stronger person, a shiro for myself, which then leads to being a wise woman elder for a younger generation, because of course the younger generation is really screaming for us to be shiros for them. Again, we don't want to have a race for who is the most oppressed. We want to be free of that. We want to be strong. We want to learn from our hurts. You know, there were, I don't know how many light bulbs Thomas Edison had before finally we had light. And that's what we want, is we want to say, okay, fall down 8 times, get up 9. And we get this pattern of being hurt over and over and over again until we start to understand, oh, I'm supposed to be learning from this person. I'm supposed to be learning what it feels like, and then stop hurting other people with different behaviors, but from the same energy. I hope that makes sense. We're going to go deeper into this on Thursday when I really coach someone. I'm so happy to do this. So anybody that wants some coaching on how to do this, if you feel like you're trapped by a past experience that's really hurt you deeply, on Thursday we're going to do a call that's video conferencing in a private community of people, and I'm going to help guide you through this. Because at the end of the day, giving lip service to forgiveness is not how you do it. We really want to say, okay, what was it that I was supposed to learn from this experience so that I can become a wiser, kinder, gentler person on this planet, which means a stronger, more powerful person. Victimization is a kind of power, because we can always stand there and we can say, I can't believe that this happened. I can't believe someone would do that. I would never do this to another person. And so that's a form of power, but it's a dysfunctional form of power, and it keeps us in a place of us against them. And we don't want to do that. We really want to have freedom from this. And we want to have unity consciousness instead of victim consciousness and lift each other up. So what we're going to do is some coaching for that, and I'm going to give people a tool that's going to help. In fact, 1 or 2 probably on Thursday. So I want to know if people have questions. You get to put that in. There's a little chat box when you opt in for the private group, and it'll ask you to tell a little bit of your story. It'll ask you what it is you're struggling with, and I'll take however many I can in the time that we're allotted and guide people through this process. I just got done doing a deep immersion healing retreat over the weekend, came back last night, and we did this with a group of 8 people, and it was so powerful. And it's incredible when you really start looking at the Me Too as a learning experience rather than just a source of pain that's constantly giving you some kind of toxic release in your body and in your relationships and in your life. So I look forward to this. This is going to be a Zoom call. And we'll be able to be face-to-face and talk to each other on video conferencing, and I'm very excited about it. It's what I do in my office every day, and it'll be nice to do it in a group the way I just did last weekend, because you get to learn from each other's stories. So powerful, because we all have some version, very similar stories, just enacted in a different way with different players. So every time someone tells their story, you get to go, oh, I'm not alone. That's one of the great things about this Me Too phenomenon that's happened on Facebook, is people get to see, oh, I'm not alone. But then you want to move forward with it. So we have the what to do with the Me Too, and I'll give you some tools for that. So this is how you get free of autoimmune disease. It's how you get free of cancer. It's how you get free of heart disease and high blood pressure. And I don't know if people that are listening to me are aware, but we have over 145 identified autoimmune diseases, and a lot of people don't realize that some of them include things you never knew were autoimmune, like osteoporosis and osteopenia, and all 3 kinds of diabetes, types 1, 2, and 3, which is Alzheimer's. You know, all these things are autoimmune. Raynaud's disease, Sjogren's, lupus, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, eczema, thyroid disease like Hashimoto's and Graves'. There are so many of them. And they're going up in their incidence instead of down. And the reason for that is because we keep trying to medicate them away instead of getting to the root cause. And I really do believe that our food supply is part of it. A lot of the toxins we have in our environment are another part of it. But another part is this victim consciousness that we seem to be really celebrating in a way. And I don't know that we're doing it consciously, but it's in the undercurrent. All you have to do is look at any news program or pick up any magazine and you'll see that. And we want to pop out of that and really start becoming heroes and sheroes again for ourselves so we can be them for the next generation. They really, really need that. So all of you that are in the MeToo hashtag, my heart is with you, and all of us have, I really believe spiritually, I may get in trouble for this, but chosen this path. I really believe that I probably decided I was going to experience this before I came to the planet, because it allowed me to really learn this so I could teach it to other people, so I could live my life purpose and be an instrument in the hands of God. And when we're an instrument in the hands of God and we just let God play us like a flute, then that means that we're open and we surrender and we're not tight and holding on to resentment and toxins. We're open containers and the music can play through us. And to do that, we really have to do the what to do about the Me Too. Because if you believe that this earthly life is a schoolhouse, then that means that whoever's hurt you has been your teacher. And it's time to learn what they were here to teach you. And then, if you believe this is a schoolhouse, you also need to know that you too have hurt people. And so we're going to learn how to forgive ourselves, forgive others, and forgive ourselves for taking on hurts that weren't really intended, because oftentimes when we've been part of the Me Too, we start looking for offenses, we start looking for hurts, and they're probably not ours to take on, but we do it anyway because we're in the habit of it. And that's part of what the victim consciousness is. So it's time to shed that and become our own, like I said, sheroes. Wonder Woman comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. And so we need to be that for ourselves and our generation and role model that to the next generation. Love you all, and I'll see you Thursday. Remember, we're going to do some private coaching, and I'm very excited to talk to all of you.